I'm just going to go out on a limb and assume that getting incomplete games is going to be the norm for this generation moving forward because we keep getting it. I'm not talking about the thing where you look at it and say, well, you can tell that they didn't have time to balance that, or, oh, you know, they probably hit their deadline before they could polish that. No, I'm talking about objectively incomplete to the point that you can actually tell it is because there's missing stuff. You know, I'm really looking forward to Halo 5. I really am. I've said on many occasions that I bought the Xbox One specifically for Halo. I love the Halo franchise, particularly games like Halo 3 and Halo Reach, which I played a lot of when I was a kid hanging out with my friends. I read the extended lore. I'm always up to date on it. I follow Halo channels about it. I'm looking forward to Halo. It's not like I hate this game. I'm looking forward to it. And I like a lot of the things 343 are doing. But then you have things like this, where they announce something and it's just a kick to the balls, because it completely deflates your hype to some extent. Forge recently got a big showcase showing off all the new things you can do in Forge, and it looks great. But then I found out that Forge isn't going to be released until December, as in it's not going to be in the game when it launches in a couple of weeks. So, we've got another game. We got another one to add to the pile that we know is incomplete because the developers have basically said so, though they obviously try and downplay it as much as possible. And before you say, oh, it's not a major feature, it's just Forge. Forge at this stage is inseparable with Halo. It's the kind of thing that you couldn't take out of the game. If Forge was permanently taken out of a game, people would get frustrated. It's not like Firefight that they swapped out and it wasn't a big deal. This is Forge. So it should be in there. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be disappointed when they don't know this because 343 weren't that upfront about it. To go to the store, pick up the game and be like, oh, I'm going to make some cool maps. Oh no, there's no Forge. Ever since Grand Theft Auto 5, we've been seeing this more and more, where games have like this incremental release of content where they say, oh, we're going to release it at this stage and then this stage and then this stage. As if that makes any sense. It's not like this is an MMO. You're paying for an actual product that you now own. And it's not complete because when you're adding stuff later that was in the other games or that you should expect to be in there, then you've got an example of something that's incomplete. We start with Grand Theft Auto 5. We all let it slide, and I did so wrongfully as well. And then, as slowly and surely, we've been seeing further and further in the top tier of developers trying it. It's not like this small team or a team that doesn't have good rapport are trying it. We've been seeing this from the top tier developers. Kojima Productions and Konami with Metal Gear Online. We now got 343 doing it with Halo. The same sort of thing happened even with Nintendo with Splatoon, where they incrementally released content. Now, you can make a strong argument that that content was actually there, which a lot of it was because it was in the game, but it was still a strange way of doing it, where you bought it and you couldn't access everything that the game had to offer straight up at that stage. And maybe it wouldn't be so frustrating if more people were vociferous in explaining why this is wrong and sort of attacking it and trying to combat it. But people aren't. You often get the excuse of, well, it's coming anyway, so what's the big deal? Like as if that's a trump card or something. You know, if you pay the full price for something, you kind of want it at that stage, don't you? You know, if I didn't have to buy Forge or something until March, and then they're like, okay, $15 for Forge, it's still not right because you shouldn't be paying for something that has been there before that is now getting put in. But at least you'd understand it if you paid a subsidized cost before. But you're paying full price up front, and you're waiting for something to come on the idea that it's, you know, that it's guaranteed to even come in the first place and that it won't get delayed. The same thing happened with GTA 5 and the heist. You know, and some people will probably be like, oh yeah, but you bought the Nathan Drake collection, but at least give Sony some credit. There was no illusion or guise that there wouldn't be the multiplayer in it. They were upfront about the fact that it wouldn't be in there. One of my biggest issues with the way 343 is handling Halo is the fact that they're cutting things that they said would be there, changing things that they said would be there, and they're not really being upfront about it. They said the game would be 1080p 60 FPS. When they announced that it was dynamic resolution, they were making this big spiel about, well, we've got these environmental destruction and 4-player co-op, instead of just being like, what was real? The Xbox One can't handle it, so we're cutting it out. I would have been happy with that than you trying to sell me your game with a bad announcement. And they've done this many times, you know, it's frustrating because 343 have done a lot of good things so far with Halo 5. 60 FPS consistently based on what I've seen from Digital Foundry, which deserves a round of applause in this age of gaming where graphics matter more than frame rate. We've had 15 free DLC maps coming, which is very applaudable. That's great. We have more emphasis on story with tying in elements from the extended lore, which Halo didn't really do that much before. We've got 4-player co-op in the campaign. All sounds great. And they hype it up. Rightfully so. But then, they're not upfront about the fact that they're cutting out things, basically falling entirely back on promises that they made, and they downplay it. You know, we had Josh Holmes get asked on Twitter, is Halo 5 going to have split screen? And instead of just saying, no, it won't, which I would have been happy with, he comes back with, there's going to be full screen in all of the modes. But that's not an answer. You're just saying it's going to be one player on all of the modes without saying if or there isn't going to be 4-player co-op locally. The dynamic resolution, they didn't really play that up. And this news, how many people do you think actually are aware of the fact that Forge isn't releasing until December? You think the mainstream audience know that? I kind of doubt it. Hell, even Activision cutting out their single player from Black Ops 3 were more transparent about the fact that they're cutting it out on the PS3 and 360. They announced it. They came out and announced it. Whereas they didn't do it with Halo 5. I think the most apt way to explain Halo 5 and kind of to a larger extent modern gaming in general is you going up to a car dealership going, hey, you know what, my car is getting old. I'd like to get a new car. And then the dealsman walks up to you and is like, oh, that's great. Let me show you this new model, Halo 5. Isn't it a beauty? Yeah, that is definitely a good car. Yeah, you know, we had to make a few concessions to make it look this good. What kind of concessions are we talking about here? Well, you know, we had to cut out the radio. You can't have that, but I want that. Yeah, but it's optional. You don't need it to drive the car. Okay, that's great. Is there anything else you cut out? Oh, you know, to make it look this good, we had to cut out the 3 seats in the car, so it's just the driver's seat. And then you're left wondering, well, how am I meant to drive anywhere with anybody else? Oh no, you can drive with everybody else. They just gotta have their own individual cars. Great. Okay, is there anything else that I need to know about? Well, do you want the limited edition model? And then you're like, oh, what does that give me? And he says, oh, you know, it comes with all these great stuff like a hood ornament, a new paint job. It doesn't really change how the car works, but it looks a lot better. Though, if you get that, you're gonna have to download the steering wheel. We're not including that. What, download the steering wheel? Yeah, you gotta download it. I mean, you can swap it out. Why don't you just put the steering wheel in there in the first place? That would be more expensive. Okay, anything else I should know about? Oh, well, we really wanted to get this out on October 27th, so, you're gonna have to wait on the AC. What do you mean? Well, we'll give you the AC, but that's gonna come in December. Right, okay, so do I pay for the AC then? No, you pay for the full car now. Yeah, would you be happy with that if you went to a car dealership and that happened to you? Probably not. And I know the comparison isn't really the same. You know, a car is a necessity, whereas a game is obviously a luxury. But it's more the fact that in a consumer transaction, to sort of be happy with the fact that you know that you aren't getting what you got before, simply because you're getting something that looks better or looks nicer or has higher production values, but is missing things, and that you got to pay for it up front, and then wait for the stuff to come later if it doesn't get delayed. I'm not happy with that. I'm not happy with that at all. And you know what? If you're gonna cut it, at the very least be upfront about it. Don't try and trick people about it. That's the best way to describe modern gaming. I mean, it looks prettier. You're getting less and less, but it looks prettier. So just forget about it. And be happy with what you got as well. I love that one. Be happy with what you got. Yeah, well, you know what? I'd be happy if when I paid money for something, I didn't get a game that is incomplete and in many ways less substantial than games from a decade ago. That's what I'd like.